Hey, what's going on, everyone? Earlier today, I saw a very powerful video that Riza Islam did with Dr. Lane Rowling, who is a virologist, and talking about the COVID-19 vaccine as well as the infectious disease and viruses that it is. But through this interview, to get the impact and information in the time that we'll be viewing this video and reacting to this video as well, because of the information that how he exposes Dr. Fauci on his credibility in whether it be his work, his business versus real life situations, doing the work, hands on, having the information and knowledge and degrees to support and validate this doctor versus the one who was in front of people, who was the face of it and who was supporting and pushing these vaccines. Because originally, what we need to understand is that Dr. Fauci originally stated that we should not be taking the vaccine. You guys go back and watch when he was publicly on national TV telling people that the vaccine would not stop them from being infected and that it still may have adverse effects. Later on, after maybe some pharmaceutical and biopharmaceutical backing or funding, so to speak, you notice that he changes his tone. This video alone changes the dynamic of the information first spewed by Dr. Fauci and now is being exposed and revealed by Dr. Lane Rowling as he was doing the interview with Riza Islam. I want to give a shout out to Riza Islam for the powerful interview he did with Dr. Lane Rowling and give him his credibility as well, because this is the information we needed that was being suppressed before each and every one of you went out and got this vaccine. Now, first off, what we want to do is to establish who this man is, his background, and continue on.
Is Dr. Lane Rowling?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm an infectious disease specialist and a trauma surgeon. I have 6 degrees. I have a BS in microbiology and chemistry, a master's in cellular and molecular genetics, 2 doctorate degrees. I'm one of 1% of the people.
This doctor, Lane Rowland, just stated he has 6 degrees and he's running it down. Can we just rewind it just a little bit? I don't want to make this too long, but you make sure you hear exactly what he's saying and what his bachelor's degrees are actually in.
I have 6 degrees. I have a BS in microbiology and chemistry, a master's in cellular and molecular genetics, 2 doctorate degrees. I'm one of 1% of the people on the planet certified in chemical and biological warfare by the U.S. Army. I teach virology in Germany. I do research.
He stated that he's one of 1%. So it's probably like only 10 people in the world that can do and understand and comprehend the information he has obtained and some of the things he did throughout his life. You're not talking about a world-renowned doctor, but you're also talking about a military veteran who did with chemical and biological warfare. His work speak for himself. So why wasn't Dr. Lane Rowland in front of the people versus Dr. Fauci? That's the question you should be asking.
Research in infectious disease and oncology to save people's lives. I spent 30 years in the jungles dealing with everything from Ebola, malaria, dengue. I put babies in body bags, and I've done vaccination programs to make the communities better in the most poorest places on the planet.
Just give us a...
I'm going to try to get an interview with Dr. Lane Rowland because, you know, it's one thing looking at another video and getting the reaction and getting the information. But when you do the interview yourself, family, let me tell you, hearing it firsthand is so much more powerful and realistic because you're hearing it from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
A brief when it comes to, did you encounter anything when it comes to your childhood education-wise? Because I was, watching something and I want to...
I think it's very important that your childhood sets you up for your future. And one of my biggest moments is when I was 6 years old and I had a white teacher tell me I was retarded and they wanted to put me in special ed. And at that age, I wanted to be an astronaut, a heart surgeon, or a fighter pilot. You never know in life, as you transition through life. And I remember when I was in high school, one of my high school teachers said, hey.
I just want to pause it right there very quickly, family, because he says something very profound that he kind of just muddled through because he didn't want to make a big point, but it's a reason why he stated a white teacher, right? He threw a race component in there because now, giving a little bit credit to Dr. Umar Johnson, he would say that in these predominantly white schools that Black children go to, that they always tend, because Black people have an ability to learn very differently than other people in the world. So if you don't learn the way that the curriculum is stated for a particular dominant group, mostly white children, then they put you in special ed because you're not picking up the information as fast and you're not comprehending it as such as they are. But we all learn different, as we all know. But because the school to prison pipeline is essentially modeled behind each other, they treat you as though you was in an assembly line, that you should be able to pick this up the way that we put it down. And that is simply not the way it is. He has 6 degrees. Fauci has 2 degrees. I have 3 degrees, associate, bachelor's, and master's. I just want to throw that in there.
What do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be a doctor. He told me I didn't have the aptitude.
That means you're not smart enough.
Fast forward to my college days at Weber State University, BS in microbiology and chemistry, minor military science, first Black to ever get a scholarship in the Army at that institution, and also the first Black in microbiology double major.
Wow.
I asked my professor for a letter of recommendation to medical school and graduate school, and she said, yes, no problem. Her name was Dr. Horn. I want to keep her famous. And sure enough, 5 years later, I'm in the office, and people don't realize that when people write letters of recommendations for you, you get to see your record. And she wrote in there that I did not have the aptitude to do graduate school work. And then
again, another white teacher, a white professor, gave this guy a recommendation, but within the recommendation stated that he did not have the aptitude to do graduate level work, meaning that he was not smart enough. This is, you know, a direct example of they smile up in your face. Backstabbers. You know that song where people smile in your face, but they talk trash behind your back. This is exactly what this is today.
10 years later, I have a scholarship at the school, and she comes up to my face and said, I knew you were going to make it.
What is
God damn. Oh my gosh, family. I don't even know how to give an example of what he just said. She gave him a recommendation, but within the recommendation stated that he did not have the aptitude, meaning he wasn't intelligent or smart enough in order to do graduate level work. And then when they gave him a scholarship, and then when he completed his doctorate degree in whatever, you know, one of his chemical, biological, virology degrees that he has, she comes and tells him, oh, I knew that you can do it. It's kind of like smack you in your face, stab you in your back, and then wiping your butt at the end. What
is your assessment from that perspective in virology? What is your perspective?
Well, in virology, the virus gets an A. Mankind gets an F.
Wow.
Because at the end of the day, when you understand virology, and this is a whole point when I started talking about this back in 2020, and congressional Black legislators came and made me their healthcare task force, COVID healthcare task force doctor, I tried to explain to people the basics. Before there was even a vaccine, you have to understand a virus.
Yes.
What is a virus? A DNA virus.
See, the credibility that he already stated and put down, even before there was a vaccine, this doctor was beating the drum on let's first understand what is a vaccine, what is a virus, how's this virus manipulating through the body, how's it been affected. He wanted to make sure on a very structural and molecular level to break it down for people to first understand what it is and the effects of it before we start going ahead and creating a vaccine.
Versus an RNA virus. And if you understand virology, real virology, and you see patients die from dengue, you see patients die from Ebola, you see people get influenza and die from that, and all the different viral diseases in the world, you have to understand the basics. The basics does not change. When you look at RNA viruses, they mutate. That is why there are no cures.
There are no cures. First and foremost, and I know some people are going to like, yeah, that's why they made a vaccine. And he's going to break it down even further, that this thing modifies and has all these different variations, and how it continues to grow and adapt and change, that you will essentially never come up with an effective vaccine in order to counteract it or to deem it non-effective.
Period. End of story. That's why people get the flu every year. And then when we look at this particular virus, the coronavirus, which is the most mutagenic virus on the planet, it changes every day. It mutates. There is no way you're going to get a vaccine that's ever going to be. And I told people back in 2020,
He said that the virus mutates each and every day, and that you would never be able to make a vaccine that be effective.
you folks will be getting 500 booster shots for the next 100 years.
Yes, you did.
And sure enough, you guys are getting booster shots and all the other things that comes negative with that.
Yes.
They ain't taking my class.
Right. You did say that, right?
I'm the professor.
Yes.
I ain't
yes.
seen none of these guys in the jungles. I've never seen them in a bio-level security 4 laboratory dealing with some of the most killer things on the planet. Where were these folks at? And they damn sure not in the jungles trucking with me for 20 plus years.
Wow.
I mean,
I'm going to tell you why that's very important, because a lot of times people get prompted up based on their education, not their actual work, not their actual experience. They read a couple of books, they took some course curriculums, and people gave them pieces of paper and said, you are an expert, you are a specialist in this, and they have not actually done the work. Well, Dr. Roland has not only the degrees, 2 PhDs, but he's actually done the work, and even on a military level, and those things are increasingly more harmful on a biological and chemical level because they're warfare. Listen to this brother.
where were they at? And this is the reality. This was I think was the offensive part, because all of a sudden you got people jumping into a lane that you should have never been in.
Yes,
And that is the when I look at that, to me, that is probably the most offensive things. You got taking people that don't have the pedigree.
Yes.
They haven't done it.
See, don't have the pedigree, meaning they don't have the work experience. They don't have the history. They don't have the proven test knowledge of actually doing the work.
They don't even know how to put on a bio-level suit. They've never done chemical, biological warfare, none of this stuff. And these people were getting this type of platform, and it was offensive because at the beginning of the pandemic.
See, to someone who's done the work, who's put in the time, who has risked their life over and over again helping people with infectious disease, he said it's disrespectful, it's impulsive because you uplift someone. Case in point, Dr. Fauci, who has never done the work like he has. Not stating that he should have been popular, but someone of equal pedigree, someone of equal talent, equal skill, equal knowledge, equal intelligence.
Me and Fauci were supposed to do an interview together.
Toward the beginning of the pandemic, you and Anthony Fauci, who knows who we all are, were supposed to do a podcast. You two were supposed to have an interview, basically a conversation.
You know, that podcast, that interview wasn't going to go over well because you can already tell how intelligent this brother is, and he's actually done the work. That's the big difference.
And the Trump administration said no.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Right, very interesting.
Wow.
Let's keep it real because we talk about integrity.
Yes.
I was doing Ralph Sampson Mile High NBA program in Denver. Spencer Haywood, Magic Johnson. These guys are asking me questions about COVID and all that stuff. And then one of the basketball players, Iceman Gerving, Mr. Fingerroll, says, Dr. Roland, you got 6 degrees. Fauci has 2.
Boom.
Fauci went to Colgate undergraduate, Cornell Medical School, and worked at NIH for 47 years.
Correct.
Dr. Roland has 6 degrees out in the real world in the jungles. Who do you think has more credibility because he's in a position for 40-something years versus somebody like me? The first question I was asked Fauci was that, show me in the book Virology and explain to me what an RNA virus is.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Don't ask the tough questions now, dog. I've been working in this position for 47 years. That doesn't mean I knew what I was doing. That just means that I could be the figurehead to tell the people what they need to do in order to be protected. Because you did the real work. We don't want you on stage. We don't want your face in papers on national and pushing this because it would just make too much sense.
Those who were giving people the real information were being banned, censored, called crazy. You were called quacks. You know, where did you get your degrees from? Was that a real college? I mean, you can tell us better than most when it comes to the particular attacks on your credit because you went against the dominant narrative.
Well, the dominant narrative is that I said people drunk the Kool-Aid and it didn't have any sugar.
Damn.
Right. Stop being puppets of the mass media. And a lot of times, family, these things are being pushed by algorithms. They're being pushed by politics. They're being pushed by the proponents that are supporting these agendas in order to have people to take things that may not be necessarily effective, not necessarily good for them. Case in point, you're looking at a news channel, let's say CNN, let's say Fox News. And we know that fast food is inherently bad for us and has a lot of saturated fat, a lot of calories. But right after they tell you about the news on how they're doing this nutrition kick, then a fast food commercial comes on. The dichotomy and duality of it is just mind-boggling, family. And we have to understand and comb through what the truth is and understand the basis, the foundation of information and the sources in which it comes from.
And now people are finding out the reality on vaccines. And now we talk about people, this is a thing about history. And I kept telling people over time, the science is going to tell you what's going to happen.
Right.
We're going to find out on these vaccines, reactivation of cancers.
Yes.
We're going to talk about reactivation of shingles.
Yes.
We're going to talk about.
He's stating right here, family, because of the vaccines, they're going to go in, and for people who've overcome and fought the battle on cancer, that their cancer could be reactivated, that your shingles could come back.
Bell's palsy. We can talk about Guillain-Barré syndrome,
It's all coming out.
myocarditis, and people young dying. Military pilots don't get that vaccine because they can't be flying a $50 million jet at 35,000 feet at Mach 6 and have some problem with their heart. Countries like Denmark, European, have banned.
Stated that pilots who's fighting fighter jets, as an example, they don't get these vaccines. And then he's about to go into how certain countries has banned these vaccines, family.
That vaccine.
Yes.
So why were you pushing it so hard
let me rewind this a
in
little.
35,000 feet at Mach 6 and have some problem with their heart? Countries like Denmark, European, have banned that vaccine.
Yes.
So why were you pushing it so hard? And people were pushing it so hard, it became sickening. And then when we look at vaccine hesitancy, it's the reality, because this is the first medical-induced vaccine made in 6 months, a year, that they were just giving it to people. What was the end results? I wrote the platform for the Vatican on vaccines.
Wow.
See, and here's the thing about discrediting someone. Now, there was rooms, there were Twitter spaces, Clubhouse rooms, YouTube forums, all talking about the vaccine, and all of a sudden, you know, we don't have a problem now. We've been taking all these other vaccines, but why is everybody against this particular vaccine? You have people on the left, people on the right, people in the middle, people on top, people on the bottom, and people were warding against the vaccinated versus the non-vaccinated. But all the while, there was these truth seekers, these truth tellers, so to speak, that was giving the information, and their voices and their their information was getting suppressed. It was getting suppressed. You're talking about a world-renowned doctor that has come to light and was doing all these interviews. And I'm going through a lot of the videos that this brother was on, and they have hardly any views on them because they were getting suppressed. You're talking about a doctor who wrote the virus and vaccination doctrine for the Vatican. Let me just back it up a little bit, because he said it a lot better than I could.
Vaccine hesitancy is the reality, because this is the first medical-induced vaccine made in 6 months, a year, that they were just giving it to people.
What did I tell you, family? They made this vaccine so fast, and usually you have years upon studies and groups and placebo groups. You have all these things that a vaccine goes through prior to this giving it to the people. And then they made sure that they pushed it to the people without any regard to the company, that you can go out and sue them for the vaccine killing a family member.
What was the end results? I wrote the platform for the Vatican on vaccines.
Wow.
And in my vaccine program for the Vatican, which is worldwide, you do a vaccine, you get your antibodies.
Yes.
You do a vaccine, you get your antibodies level. That's community. You know if the population is vaccinated. So why did you folks out there that went out there and got this vaccine, you go down there, they give you a Subway sandwich, you eat your Subway sandwich, they say, Big Mama, come back in 21 days, you get another sandwich, and that's it. Did you get a placebo, or do you know your antibody levels?
Right.
And I remember one of the debates I had with a Dr. Herbert on the Black News Channel. I asked the same question, man. What is the antibody levels? Because that is your protective mechanism.
That's
that
how you measure.
we measure if the population is vaccinated and have antibodies to it, or the population has been exposed.
Yes.
And in the early days of this virus in England, London, 68% of the people in the initial 6 months of the COVID pandemic all had antibodies to the virus. They did another measurement 3 months later, 8%. So that told you that the virus, there is no long-term immunity to COVID virus. Period. End of story. What book are you looking at?
Let me just rewind that, family, because he said there is no long-term protection against COVID because you took a vaccine. Listen.
Another measurement 3 months later, 8%. So that told you that the virus, there is no long-term immunity to COVID virus. Period. End of story. What book are you looking at?
Yes.
Real world, there is no long-term effects of long-term antibody with the coronavirus, period.
No protection long term.
None. It's the second leading cause of the common cold for the last 3,000 years. The first pandemic was 20,000 years ago. The virus figured it out. This is where we're at today.
That's a very powerful interview that our brother Reza Islam did. Please go and check out the full video. I didn't want to take too much from the brother's hard work, but it's a 45-minute interview, and Dr. Lane Roland broke it down masterfully. There's so much other nuggets in their family that you really need to know, whether you took the vaccine or not. But man, very, very powerful. And definitely he exposed not only Dr. Fauci, but he exposed in some manner of ways the government as well as pharmaceutical companies, because everybody was promoting this vaccine. Even your company, even your business, everybody was like, because of the mandate, you got to take this and you got to take that, and because we don't want you coming to work for us and give other people COVID-19 and etc. Family, this is the information a lot of us needed prior to. Whether you're black or white, really doesn't really matter. Hispanic or Asian, it really doesn't matter, because if information like this was not suppressed and was promoted, the question is how many people would have not taken the vaccine? How many people would have forgone the vaccine and practiced community immunity or herd immunity of some sorts, right? Who would have foregone doing that? But because people's livelihood was on the line, people's careers and jobs was on the line, and also the manipulation with the information that, oh, well, you need the vaccine because the people who are mostly going to be affected is the elderly, like your mother, your father, your grandfather, your grandmother, so on and so forth, your great uncles and great aunts and things. So people went and got these vaccines in droves, in millions, because of the propaganda and manipulation and the promotion of it without the real science to back it. And here we are today. The information is now being released. So again, credit goes to Reza Islam on this one. Thank you, brother, for doing that interview. Like I said before, family, I'm going to try to reach out to Dr. Lane Roland, do the interview, because this is powerful information. And I have a couple of other questions that I think you guys really need to know. I don't know the answer. I know that brother does. But anyway, you guys have a great and wonderful day. I'm out.